and we will be covering the subject known as vast skills and means, the attitude of the secret Mantrayana. Okay, that one is covered, right? I think we are.
Yes, it's covered. Yes.
The right conduct while listening to Dhamma. Okay, so now we are in the conduct section, and the three what to avoid during the listening to Dhamma teachings, and what to do and what not to do during the Dhamma teachings. So we are in the conduct section, so we will go from there. So I'm going to talk for 45 to 50 minutes, and then the remaining time we will invest in Q&A. Okay. So in the conduct section, so what to do and what not to do during the Dhamma teaching. So this is more to do with mental conduct rather than physical conduct. Of course, when you consider the physical conduct, there are a lot more, but more important is the mental conduct during the Dhamma teachings. Physical conduct are even though if you have an improper physical conduct, you may still be able to obtain the teaching and so on and so forth, the teaching, the initiations, all that. But if the mental conduct is improper, then you will not be able to obtain or maintain the Dhamma talks, Dhamma teachings. So therefore, conduct here refers to mental conduct rather than physical conduct. So, for example, physical conduct is out of respect for the teacher and the teachings. One is not supposed to, point feet towards the teacher, like that. If you have to sit in front of the teacher, usually the perfect way is to sit cross-legged. Or if you have a leg problem, then you can sit on a chair, but you do not point your feet towards the altar or to the teacher out of respect, and so on and so forth. Like you don't listen to the Dhamma teachings lying down, sleeping, lying down because you might fall asleep. But of course, unless you are very sick and you cannot get up, that's another matter. So things like that. Also, you're not supposed to wear hats or caps when you are receiving Dhamma teachings. Unless, of course, you have a necessity to wear a cap. I think back in the day, caps are part of a usually men's pride. So caps and hats are the symbol of pride for men. So when they wear the cap or the hat, it symbolizes their pride. It symbolizes where they come from. It usually tells the status of their creed, and so therefore they come with ego, pride. And with pride, when you are filled with pride, you will not be able to obtain the teaching from someone else because you think you're already greater than that person. So His Holiness, whenever he teaches, because when His Holiness teaches, there will be a large gathering, and then it may rain, and the sun sometimes shines very harshly in certain parts of India. So then His Holiness says, okay, you guys, the sun is very strong, the sun is very harsh. You can wear your hat, or you can open your umbrellas, and so on and so forth. But His Holiness usually gives the permission like that. That statement comes from the fact that you're not supposed to do these things during the Dhamma talks, the teachings. So unless, of course, the teacher gives permission to do so, that will be another matter. So these are some of the conducts, and then you are not supposed to eat, because if you keep eating, usually you are munching something, chop, chop, chop like that, and then you are disturbing other person who are listening to the Dharma teaching. So it's basic common sense, basic manners that you have to, that you would usually observe when you are in a library or in some important place. You would of these kind of, so you're supposed to do just that. So these are the physical sort of some of the physical conducts or physical etiquette that you will need to observe during Dharma talks. And one more thing is when the teaching is about, this is very important, I think. This is very important. When you are receiving Dharma talks, so there are different types of teachings, right? Initiations and empowerments in the tantric sense, and then explanatory teachings like what I'm doing right now. And then there is something called transmission teachings, which is basically, so if I receive some teachings, then I just transmit them to you. I'm not explaining anything. So whatever, for example, I've received this teaching, the perfect words of my perfect teacher. So I'm just gonna read it, the book, word by word from beginning to the end. And so you have got all the transmission. I transmit the whole book to you. So this is called transmission type of teachings, transmission teaching. Then the explanatory teachings are there. What I'm doing right now is more of a explanatory. And then there are initiations and things like that. So in terms of the first two, which is empowerment and initiation type of teachings, tantric teachings, as well as explanatory teachings like what I'm doing right now, you're not supposed to do something which we usually consider good and proper and spiritual, which is to chant mantra. When I'm doing the explanatory teaching, you're not supposed to do mantras. You're not supposed to do your prayers. You're not supposed to do, when you are receiving a tantric teaching, you should not chant or recite mantras because explanatory teachings and initiation type of teachings are both contemplative teachings. You have to contemplate, you have to visualize, you have to follow the instruction of the Guru moment by moment. So therefore, if you are doing a chanting, so a real chanting should be fortified with mental visualization and contemplation, meditation. So if you are just blabbering something like Om Mani Padme Hum, then that's not really a mantra chanting. Of course, it's you are taunting the mantra, but it's not a real chanting. To do a real or an authentic, a real chanting, you would need to combine that with your mental fortification, which is visualization. So you can't do both at the same time. Either you can listen to the Dharma talk or you can visualize your mantras. So therefore, since you are in the teaching place, teaching venue, when you are receiving initiation or you are receiving explanatory type of teachings, you're not supposed to do chantings. But when you are doing the last, when you are receiving the last type of teaching, which usually happens with the Gangyur and Tengyur, all the teachings by Buddha and the masters from India, which sums up to 300 volumes of thick books, thick scriptures. So when you receive those things, they are usually, we don't usually explain them. Usually the tradition is we just read it from beginning to the end. So this is called transmission type of teachings. So when you are receiving transmission type of teachings, but it's not just with the Gangyur, it can happen with anything. Just as I mentioned, it can happen with this book. If I just read this book from beginning to the end without any explanation, then it's called transmission teaching. And when you are receiving that thing, you don't have to think or you don't have to contemplate on the meaning of the teaching, because you are here to receive just the transmission, not the explanation or the initiation. So therefore, thinking, contemplating is not required. So during such teachings, you can actually relax. You can even sleep, lie down and listen to the teachings. And jokes aside, of course, you can do chanting and all these things when you are receiving this kind of. The only thing you have to do is to keep yourself awake, that you are not sleeping, and you hear the whole teaching, and that's it. So there are different types of mental, different types of conducts concerned with mental conducts. There are different types of conduct. So what we are going to talk about today is the mental conducts rather than the physical conducts. The first of which is the example, the analogy of the three pots. A pot that is turned upside down, a pot that has a hole in it, and then a pot that has poison in it. So the first thing is the pot being put upside down. So if you have a, let's say a cup, if you have a cup and the cup is put upside down, then you cannot put anything into the cup because it's upside down. The entrance is upside down. So similarly, if your the physical extension of your attention, which is your ears, so if your ears are not listening to the Dharma talk, in other words, as I said before, if you are during the Dharma talk, you are busy doing other things. If you are talking with other people, if you are eating or this kind of thing, then the province of your ears, your oral canal, the ability to hear is actually diminished. You will not be able to listen. You will not be able to grasp what is being taught. So if you cannot hear well what is being taught, for example, if you're listening to music during the Dharma talk, if you're talking with your friends during the Dharma talk or things like that, physically you are sort of like physically not there. In such cases, you will be missing the teachings. You will not be able to hear. You will be not able to grasp the words spoken by the teacher. In which case, there will be nothing for your mind to pay attention towards. And so therefore, so this is in regards to being distracted during the Dharma talks. And then physical distraction, like chanting the mantra and this kind of thing. Then we have the second one, which is the pot with a hole. So if the pot has a hole in it, then even though it can capture the essence, it can capture all the good things, but the good things will not stay in there. The drinks will not stay in the cup because it will all drip. So therefore, this is like if your mind, not just physically but also your mentally, if your mind is physically you are sitting very upright, you're not chanting any mantra, you're not talking with your friends or anything, you're sitting very upright and very properly, but your mind is actually thinking about other things like, okay, what shall I cook for lunch, what shall I do about this and that things, planning and doing all this kind of thing, then your mind is not physically, your mind is not there. In which case, your mind is not there to witness the talks, the teachings being made by the teacher. And so for that reason, the mind is not able to grasp or to hold anything that was being taught. So therefore, you missed all the teachings. During the time of the teaching, during the time of the teaching session, you feel like you agree with everything, you know everything, you are going, you are nodding your head like this with all the teachings, but by the end of the teaching, you have nothing to carry home. So this happens when your mind is distracted. And the third thing is a pot or a cup with poison. So this cup doesn't have a hole in it. It is not upside down. So it can capture the content. It can capture the drinks. It can also hold the drinks properly. But the problem with that last pot is it has poison in it. So if you drink it, instead of nourishing yourself, your body, it will become the end of you. So similarly, you are listening intently. You are listening physically and mentally. You are listening intently to the teachings. But the reason why you are listening to the Dharma teaching is because after receiving this and that high teaching, this and that secret teachings, I'm going to, give this teaching, basically sell this teaching to some rich people who I guess, I don't know, like you sell that to you are going to teach to many people and make lots of money or become famous or whatever, powerful. So if you have that kind of intention, then it become a poison, because Dharma is Dharma is medicine for the mind, for the self. It is to nurture yourself, but instead of nurturing you, it actually became the end of you. What we call medicine being turned into a poison. Instead of helping you, it's actually bringing you down. So therefore, these three flows or faults, what we call in the Dharma term, we call it the three faults of the pot. So these three faults of the pot should be avoided at all cost. So if these are the not to do things, then what are the to do things? Comes the next question. So for which the Indian sage Padamba Sangye said, listening to the teachings. So listening, right? So usually there's the three steps of practice: listening or learning, then contemplating, and then meditating. Tösam gomsum. So learn or listen to the teachings like a deer listening to music. So when you are listening to teachings, you should be so entranced by the Dharma, just like a deer is entranced by the music. So you should listen to the teachings physically, very carefully, and then contemplate on the meaning of the teaching without losing any attention. Just like so the second line goes, contemplate them like a northern nomad sharing sheep. So when the nomads are sharing their sheep, they pay total attention to it and they do nothing else, just keep doing that. They keep doing it for hours and hours. So similarly, when we contemplate, follow suit. Then while doing the execution of what you have just heard and contemplated upon, you should be like a dumb person savoring food. A dumb person. So when a dumb person is eating food, a dumb person actually cannot explain anything in general. If you ask any question, proper answer. And especially when the dumb person is eating their meal, if you ask them any questions, of course they will not reply. They don't know how to reply, and they will not reply. They will just be totally. They will be totally absorbed in the act of eating, and that's all they are. So similarly, when you are practicing in the form of meditation or in other application, in real life application, it should be something like a dumb person savoring food. I'm sorry. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Meditate on them like a dumb person savoring food. Practice them like a hungry yak eating grass. So when you are a hungry yak or a hungry person, when they are eating, no one can stop them. No one can just interfere with their eating. If you talk to them, they might talk back. They might answer to your question while food being filled in the mouth. So such is their eagerness to keep on eating. Similarly, one should practice in such way. And due to those causes, then the end or the result be such like the sun coming out from behind the clouds. So when the sun is hidden under the clouds, it seems dark. When it's cloudy, when there's when the clouds are filled in the sky, it is seemingly dark. But when the sun suddenly or at last comes out from the cloud, then everything will be so bright. So similarly, once you practice, once you're listening, once you contemplate, once you meditate and put into application your practices in such and such way, then the result will be also something like sun coming out of the clouds, super bright. So in addition to that, one thing I want to tell you is in the first line says, listen to the Dharma teaching like listening to a deer, listening to the music. So this is actually in relation to something called, if you have seen any Tibetan gombas, Tibetan monasteries or temples in general, maybe monasteries, not all the temples, but most of the gombas or monasteries have on the top of the monastery, they always have the Dharma chakra, the wheel of the Dharma, and that Dharma chakra is surrounded by two deers, one male deer and a female deer. So the deer are very attentively looking at and intently looking at the Dharma chakra, the wheel of the Dharma. So wheel of the Dharma, of course, is not just any wheel. It's a symbol for the teaching of the Dharma. And then the deers are us, the practitioners, the listeners, the audience, the students. So what it signifies is this is a temple in the sense of a house. So this is a house where contemplation of the teaching of the Buddha is highly regarded. The main job that we do here, like in today's time, when we go to the city, there are lots of shops, and each shop has a hoarding. Each shop has a board, saying, okay, this is a shop for Apple, this is a shop for pizza, this is a shop for this and that. So each shop has a label. Similarly, the monasteries have that label atop. Tibetan monasteries have that label atop, on top of the monastery, saying this is a place where contemplation of teaching of the Buddha is regarded very highly. Next is something called the six. The next is something called the six stains. The six stains are pride, lack of faith, and lack of effort, distraction, outward distraction, inward tension, and discouragement. So the first of which is pride, as I mentioned before, that one of the reasons that during the Dharma teachings you are not supposed to wear hat physically is hat or caps or hat or headgears. Headgears are usually a type of headgears are related to certain creed, certain status in ancient India, anyways. So therefore, when people come with their headgears on, they usually think that, okay, because I belong to this and that class, so I am higher than most of the audience, of course, and then also I'm higher than the teacher, even in terms of caste and in terms of class. So one very important thing is when Buddha sort of started his fellowship, when Buddha started teaching, there is no this distinction or this in Buddhism, in Buddha Dharma, in the fellowship of the Buddha, there is no discrimination between the so-called high caste and low caste. Okay, there is high caste, there is low caste. Buddha did not sort of challenge the caste system. Many people say Buddha is a revolutionary in the sense that he challenged all of these things. He did not sort of like challenge them in the sense that it is wrong or right, but he said, in my fellowship, in my fellowship, in my Sangha, there is no discrimination between high caste and low caste and so on and so forth. So anyone who came under the wing of the Buddha is looked after as equal. Anyway, so the point is, when people come from a certain background, social background, social high status and class, they usually carry their pride with them, because in practice, like during the Buddha's time, after the Buddha, and before the Buddha, there has always been the system. The Dharma system is already there. The Buddha Dharma started from Buddha's time, but before that, the Hindu Dharma still that was there. And then the great sages were teacher to the kings and the nobility and so on and so forth. So, so in such regard, in certain royal courts, even though they would like respect the master, but the master would stay below the king and so on and so forth. The guru of the king, the teacher of the king, would be seated below below the king, because the king is the ruler of the kingdom, and so he has a higher social status and so on and so forth. So many of these things were there, and it doesn't really matter whether somebody wears a headgear during the Dharma to the Buddha's teaching. It doesn't really affect the Buddha himself, so to speak. The thing is, when you come wearing those high gear, the royal gears, and especially the headgear and so on and so forth, you come with something called pride. You are armed with pride, and that pride actually interferes your ability to grow spiritually. And so therefore the headgears were part of the headgears. You are not supposed to wear headgears during the Dharma teaching and so on and so forth. Anyway, so all this comes from the fact that one should do away with pride. One should do away with pride. So if you come with the pride, then you will not listening. You will always feel that even though I don't know much about Dharma teachings, but I know a lot about many other things than my teacher. So therefore, I'm greater than my teacher, and I just came to learn this small thing, and after this, I'm going to do what this is going to enhance my ability, enhance my superpower. And the so-called teacher from which I'm receiving my Dharma talks is like a vassal king, a small kingdom, the king of a small kingdom, giving their gifts to the emperor of the land. So, I'm just enhancing my power, so to speak. So in this regard, you may be able to grow yourself in the sense of supernatural powers and so on and so forth. But in the spiritual sense, you are not growing at all. So therefore, if your goal is to become enlightened, if your goal is to become clearer and clearer and more, to pacify all your negativities, to bring clarity to your mind, to your decision, to your life, and to bring stability to yourself, to bring peace into your livelihood. If these are your goal, then pride is to be done away with. So therefore, the first thing is magil, which is the pride, and then of course comes the from pride comes, the pride is always followed with lack of faith. So if you have actually the Tibetan word English, in the English it says lack of faith, but the Tibetan here is kesu, which is looking down upon something, to look down. So if you have pride usually brings you up and the other person down. So if you look down upon the other person, which is the teacher, obviously, then you have no faith that the teacher can actually do much for you. And in which regard you lose faith, and when you lose faith, there is no effort, and when there is no effort, then there will be you will not be listening attentively attending the teaching. So therefore there comes the outward distraction, and when that happens, when you are distracted, when your mind is distracted, but your body is staying inside at the teaching venue, then there's a tension. There is a tension between the mind, which is going outward, and the body, which is trapped inward, and then the tension builds up. And with the tension comes discouragement, because when you are filled with tension, then the results will be very difficult to come by. And when there is no spiritual results, then you meditate or practice for hours, days, and months and years, and still there is not much result coming out. And then comes the discouragement. So each thing leads to another, starting from pride. And then with pride, I think I told this story last year, but just a reminder. There was this story of one student coming to. The student himself is a great learned scholar, and he came to another great master, and the great master is supposed to have amassed to be enlightened. It's a Japanese story anyways. So the master is supposed to be enlightened. The master who the student came to learn from is regarded as an enlightened person, and the student himself is a very great scholar. So when he came to the learn from the master, he was filled with pride, and the master actually noticed that the student is full of pride, and then the master actually set the tables for the student to sit down, and the master served tea to the student. Usually it's the other way around, right? And then the student also thought like, okay, even the master knows that I'm a great scholar. He respects me. That's why he's serving me instead of me serving him. And then the master poured tea to him. So he has his, he was given his cup, and the master started pouring the tea from the teapot, and he kept pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring and never stopping, and the tea overflowed, and the student was like, hey, what are you doing? Stop. What's the point of this thing? What's the point of what you are doing? Have you gone blind? Have you gone mad? What's wrong with you? And the master said, I'm doing what you are just doing. You came to me filled with pride, and you have no room for anything to grow, anything to learn, anything to listen to. And similarly, I'm just showing what's happening to you in a physical form. And then in that moment, since he's a great scholar and he's a great thinker, obviously, of course, that was the eureka moment. That was the moment for him. And then it struck him, the student, and then he realized he was being proud and all that. And then he was humbled by the wit showed by the master, and then he knelt before the master and then started learning from him. So this is one story that is related to pride. Okay. So we will stop here. And open for Q&A.
Yes, Rinpoche.
Chúng ta dừng.
We have one question, Rinpoche. I'll read. Prostrate to Rinpoche. Regarding not wearing headgear because it is associated with our status or pride during the Buddha time, does that rule also apply to us wearing or carrying brand name items to Dharma talk sessions in today's time, because they are somewhat associated to status and pride as well? Thank you, Rinpoche. Thank you, Rinpoche.
Yes, very good question. Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, it's the same thing. Back in the day, people like headgear is a status symbol, and nowadays not many people wear headgears anyways. And for ladies, you carry the accessory bag, or what it's called. So and then for purse, okay. And for gentlemen, it's usually accessories like watch and horn and things like that. So it's one thing to carry them. It's one thing to buy good products for your own sort of use, and then another thing to fling it towards others to show off. So normally when you buy branded stuff, you actually want to tell people that you are worthy of something, and then of course if you already buy an expensive purse or something, the goal of course is to show them, to flaunt it, and then you will do so, and then you are sort of like there is a satisfaction from the fact that, oh, people are amazed, people are like surprised at the fact that you are having such an expensive item, purse or a watch or whatever. And from that sort of satisfaction or happiness, even though happiness and satisfaction usually is a good thing, actually it boosts your ego in the sense of, I'm a little bit better than them. I have this latest bag from this and that brand, which no one else has. I have this car that no one else has, and so on and so forth. And it boosts your ego. So boosting your ego actually, so when you are boosted with ego, you are actually not boosted, but you are bloated with your ego. And with the bloat comes when your stomach is bloated, when you don't want to eat anything. Similarly, when your ego is bloated, when you have a bloated ego, then you don't want to even though you are in the teaching venue, your mind is, occupied with other things, and you have no room to grow. You're no longer growing spiritually, and so therefore, it is, as I said, it is one thing to buy good items for your well-being and things like that, and another thing to buy expensive stuff just to flaunt it. And again, of course, the only reason you buy designer stuff is only to tell people that you have these things. So, a long time back, some time back, we were discussing, me and my friends, monks. So, we were looking at some of these, some magazine, and then there was like a bag which is like, I don't know, 2 million or that kind of thing, very expensive stuff. And so we were like wondering why people would pay so much money for something that useless. Normally it doesn't have that value of that the perceived value is not an inherent value of that item. And so I told them the reason that people buy this kind of stuff is usually they want to tell people that they have money. But if you just keep, like if you cover yourself in money and go into the town, or just keep flush waving your money like this, people will think you're crazy. So what you have to do is you have to buy something that's equivalent to the money that you are holding in your hand. Let's say $1 million, and then you convert that into an item, an object that everybody else knows is equivalent to that much amount of money. So then when you carry that bag or that item, then people know, oh, that person has $2 million worth of such and such. And so there are two things. One, this is in English it's called vanity, right? This kind of thing. And just as the name suggests, it is vain. It boosts or bloats your ego for a very short period of time, and afterwards, of course, you want the latest thing is latest only for a few months, couple of months, and then another latest thing comes, and the previous latest thing is no longer in fashion. So if you carry the old-fashioned thing, then you are out of sync with the latest fashion. So you have to keep updating your inventory, all this like that. Anyway, the point is, if you bring these things uh, uh, into the Dharma teachings, of course you're just bloating your ego. Another thing, some people, I'm not trying to discourage you guys because by saying that, but some people, when they come to Dharma talks, people who have attended many Dharma teachings, usually try to ask the most sophisticated and complicated question. Uh, uh, and we know, not because I'm a great learned or anything like that, but because we have been in the monastery for so long and we have dealt with so many people, because every day we have morning and evening time we have debates, and we engage in heated debate with with people every day. So we have some sort of like knowledge of uh, like mannerism of people. And so anyway, this is not just me. Most of the monks know that. So some people try to ask very complicated and sophisticated question. And so this is again similar to the headgear thing, even though they're not physically flaunting. They're not physically flaunting. They're not flaunting a physical object. They are flaunting, let's say, mental object, in the sense that they have this and that much knowledge. So what do you say? You know, I know this and that. Oh, in the Theravada system, this and that. In the Vajrayana, blah, 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 like that. In the Zen master said this and that. And what do you think, Rinpoche? So this is a way of telling people in the audience that I have read this and this and that book, and I have learned this and that. I have amassed that and that much knowledge. So the way of boosting or bloating the ego for these people are not in the sense of physical value, materialistic value, but in the sense of uh, value of the knowledge, which is higher, usually considered higher than material value. But again, that these people also fall in the category of bloating their ego. So, of course, when people ask a genuine question about related to their practice, then we can tell it is so, and then we give, an appropriate reply. But when we know that the person is, when the person is trying to, flaunt their knowledge, show off their knowledge of the Dharma and so on and so forth, then we give a fitting reply. There was once there was a teaching by His Holiness. Somebody was doing the exact same thing during the question and answer time, and His Holiness said, "What a silly question! Next question." So we shall conclude today's teaching here. And dedication now, please. Chanju semjo rembo ba nama ye ba nyamba me ba